Well, here we are. Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2 is out, and, believe it or not, I've played it. Now, I don't want to sit here and just do a review of the game, that's not really my style. I have very little to say about the core gameplay, and my thoughts on the roster have been pretty well documented by this point. Suffice it to say, I'm not totally thrilled with it, and there's no way in hell I'm buying the DLC as it currently stands. But there's one thing that, despite the headache of this game's pre-release cycle, I've always held out hope for. The campaign mode. This is the one aspect of the game I've actually gotten more excited about the more I've seen of it. So, I've decided that's what this video is going to be. We are going to deep dive this thing, play it all the way out to the credits, and decide whether or not it's the saving grace of this game. Spoilers ahead, by the way. So, for starters, the story itself is pretty simple. Vlad Plasmius has created a device that controls people's minds and is using it to control pretty much every playable character on the roster. Except for SpongeBob, who gets bailed out by Clockwork. He tasks us with progressing through a series of challenges in order to free the other heroes and eventually take down Plasmius. Anytime we fail, Clockwork conveniently turns back time so we can start over. This is where that whole roguelike element comes into play. You're basically throwing yourself at these same challenges over and over again, gathering resources until you're eventually well equipped enough to make it to the end. I feel like this is going to be pretty hit or miss for people. If you like roguelikes, enjoy building yourself up from nothing, don't mind dying, and don't mind a certain degree of repetition, you'll get a lot out of this system. If any of those things sound mind-numbing to you, yeah, this can be kind of deflating. I'm definitely not a roguelike person myself, but I was still willing to push through and give it a chance despite how admittedly bad at the game I am. I did find myself struggling at first, but having much more fun once I finally built myself up to a point where I could consistently finish runs. For the record, a finished run consists of 3 major zones, each with about 12 stages to complete. These stages can be anything from little mini-games, mob fights against enemies, one-on-ones with possessed characters that you could add to your roster, free perks, paid perks, and so on. But each zone always ends with a boss fight. After every attempt, Clockwork will send you back to a hub, very cute contextualization for the roguelike gameplay by the way, where you can give yourself some permanent upgrades as well as just have fun decorating. Once you get good, it doesn't take terribly long to complete a run. If you add up each stage in each zone, it's about 36 stages. That sounds like a lot, but it's really not. I was finishing runs in under an hour once I got the hang of it, and I still consider myself to be very bad at this game. I was basically just spamming charge moves while stacking healing perks, but it got me to the end, so who's really the bad player here? So, overall, I'd say this is a fun gameplay loop, but there's a big asterisk to that. You see, in order to actually beat the game, as in playing out the entire story and watching the credits, you have to complete 4 runs. Yeah, multiply that 36 by 4, and suddenly, yeah okay, well 144 is a rather big number. And that's not counting all the times you'll inevitably fail runs early on. There are story reasons as to why you have to do what is effectively the same exact thing 4 times in a row, but they aren't, like, good reasons. The first time you finish a run, it'll turn out that you only defeated a clone of Vlad, not the man himself. The second time, it'll be the real Vlad, but his machine will still blow up the universe because I guess we just forgot to account for that. The third time, he'll for super realsies this time be defeated, but it'll be revealed that Clockwork is actually already under the mind control effects, so now you have to do a 4th run to stop him. Just why? This would maybe be warranted if each go-around there was some kind of major change, like you'd be traveling through new zones with new bosses or something. But no, the only change is on the 4th run you fight Clockwork instead of Vlad. And I gotta say, for a surprise final boss, Clockwork was pretty underwhelming both in gameplay and story. If you're gonna set up that there's a bigger player in the background that even Vlad is trying to stop and you're giving us Clockwork as an ally, my first immediate thought is, oh, Dark Danny must have gotten out and he's gonna be the surprise reveal final boss. I know that only me and other Danny Phantom fans will know that Clockwork and Dark Danny are in any way associated with each other, but I still think it would have been way cooler to see that than just fighting Clockwork. It also would have been nice if the secret final boss wasn't a complete pushover. Not that any of the bosses were really giving me trouble by this point, except the stupid flying Dutchman. That fucker can die in a ditch. Again, I guess, since he's already dead. But anyway, yeah, you could at least give Clockwork way more health, or some really tricky moves, or make him fast and hard to hit, just anything, really. But I digress. The point is, yes, the campaign is fun, but it can feel pretty needlessly drawn out with a lackluster final act. And if you really hate roguelikes, you might want to steer clear. Well, that was pretty fast and succinct. Oh, did you think we were done? You think I'm stopping at the most basic overview of the gameplay and plot? I told you we were deep diving, so let's deep dive. I've given the generalities, now it's time for all the dirty little details. Let's finish up the bosses since we already have the ball rolling there. There are 6 total bosses, 2 per zone. The Wilderness Zone gets either King Jellyfish or the Flying Dutchman, both from SpongeBob. The Metropolis Zone gets either Shredder from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Sartana of the Dead from El Tigre. Or Sartana de los Muertos, I guess. I could have sworn they just called her Sartana of the Dead in the show, but whatever, I'm not complaining about more Spanish. The Outer Space Zone gets the previously mentioned Vlad Plasmius or Clockwork, both from Danny Phantom. This is a pretty solid number of bosses. Let's compare it to Smash Ultimate. That game has 10 bosses, but is also a much larger scale game. And also, 4 of those bosses kinda just come in pairs, so it feels more like 8 bosses. For a considerably smaller game like this, 6 bosses works totally fine. It's honestly more than I was expecting. That said, I do question the decision to have 2 SpongeBob and Danny Phantom bosses. Why are we needlessly doubling up on representation for these shows? I suppose the Danny Phantom ones are there for story reasons, so fine, I guess. But SpongeBob doesn't have that excuse. Especially when there are plenty of cool alternatives. Where's Vexus, Firelord Ozai, Professor Calamitous, Tack? No, not that one! There we go. Not to mention, since you're going through all these zones at least 4 times, likely quite a few more than that, you're inevitably fighting each of these bosses a lot of times with the exception of Clockwork. So I think in this context, variety is especially important. But all that said, I can't be too disappointed in this set. Again, it was more than I expected, and seeing Sartana of the Dead in action was such an incredibly pleasant surprise. In general, I'm very impressed by how much love El Tigre got in this campaign. Which I suppose leads us to our next topic of discussion, the NPCs. Throughout the campaign, certain NPCs will be stationed either in the hub or will give you perks during runs. All of these are delightful, every single one. Since we were talking about El Tigre, oh my god, hi Frida! I haven't seen you in ages, how have you been? Grr? We get new grr lines? The cabbage merchant from Avatar? Alright, sure, fuck it, why not? Jenny's mom gives you upgrades, that's so perfect. Master Splinter runs the training mode, inspired choice. Gary and Mrs. Puff, yeah, sure, whatever. Gaz Membrane? Look, all you meme lords even get Hugh Neutron. Powder Toast Man too, I guess no one's ever really gone. It's truly incredible how many fun characters they squeezed into this thing. This is what really goes a long way with me. Now it's less like these fighters are just being plucked out of their respective worlds, and much more like all these worlds properly colliding. This is what the crossover should be, and it's all further elevated by the absolutely stellar voice acting. Every single character is fully voiced. Not just the fighters and bosses, but all of these NPCs. And you can tell the VAs are having so much fun slipping back into these roles. I was gawking at the credits as I saw all their names scroll by. And there are a lot of lines. Each NPC that gives out perks has at least 10 generic lines to run through before they're out. And not only that, but depending on who you're playing as, they'll actually sometimes have unique interactions. From what I can tell, this pretty much only happens when the 2 characters are from the same show, but even that is such a nice level of polish. I actually freaked when I heard Frida and Manny chatting like no time has passed at all. It really took me back to watching these 2 best friends hang out on a regular basis. Not to mention Jimmy questioning how his dad got into his lab, Jenny chatting it up with her mom, Danny catching up with Clockwork, Vlad and Ember getting a little feisty with each other, which I was really surprised to see. These 2 don't really get one-on-one conversations in the show, but the little dialogue they have here was still so perfectly in character and charming. Massive props for that. And of course, Zim is the gift that keeps on giving as he demands Gur's help, promises to bring doom, and just gets completely flabbergasted when encountering Gaz again. If there's one thing that really makes this whole campaign special, it's all these interactions between all these characters. I only have one major complaint about the whole thing, and it's that we don't get to see the fighters talk to each other very much. The only time that'll happen is if you encounter a possessed fighter for the first time during a run, and you're using a character from that universe. That's pretty much it. And I realize they couldn't make actual scripted moments between everyone because of how they unlock. There's no guarantee you'll have everyone before beating the game. I mean, I had everyone, but I'm also a loser. But that's a pretty small nitpick in what is otherwise a pretty flawless aspect of the game. I love it. Sort of in that same vein, I also really love the different Mook enemies that can appear during mob fights. They change with every zone, and there's a lot of them. The girl-eating plant from Jimmy Neutron, Sir units from Invader Zim, Sartana's goons from El Tigre, plenty of SpongeBob enemies, including those fish with chum bucket helmets from the movie, These My Life as a Teenage Robot goons, Ectopusses from Danny Phantom, the Foot Clan from TMNT, and a whole bunch more. I don't even mind seeing the random walking food from Garfield. Some of the magic of this does dissipate when you realize a lot of these enemy models are just repurposed from stages or other sources, but even then, I can't help but crack a huge smile whenever I fight a set of these. Just another really charming inclusion that helps flesh out the presence of all the shows on the roster. Unfortunately, not every possible challenge during a run is going to come with banger references like these. The little minigames and platforming segments are cute, but leave a little to be desired. They've got to break the target's clone, which is unique to every character, this Smash the Robot speed challenge thing, and these platforming bits that are either Legend of Korra, Wild Thornberries, or Jimmy Neutron themed, though the theming doesn't go very far. Also, my game kept failing to load the Wild Thornberries one, causing me to reset. In general, the Switch seems to run this game very poorly. I don't know what's up with that. Is this not the console most kids are going to be playing this on? Wouldn't you want to put a lot more effort into making sure that version functions properly? Anyway, point being, for every lovingly crafted reference fest, there are a couple small challenges that are just kinda there. Completely harmless, but nothing remarkable. Actually, sometimes actively harmful. Again, this shit would just kinda brick my game sometimes. I think the last major thing to really sink our teeth into are the perks themselves. They come in two forms: temporary perks that you get during runs and only apply for that run, and permanent ones you get from Jenny's mom. All of these are not only useful, but are themed to the different Nick shows. For example, there are a couple projectile perks themed to Jenny's sisters. A Reptar one that gives you buffs when you charge attack, perks representing all the bending from Avatar, a whole bunch of SpongeBob ones, this girl one that gives you a free stock, and so on and so forth. These are all cute and add one final layer of fun references. In fact, a lot of the 90s shows kinda get shafted to perks and only perks. They don't really get much in the way of NPCs or bosses. It's almost like the 2000 shows are more character and story driven with deeper plots and more fun interactions that lend themselves well to a campaign mode like this, and may also imply that those shows are just kinda higher quality in general. I'm sorry, I just got one too many comments last time insisting Nick peaked in the 90s, and no. Just no. Anyway, back to perks. I do wish there were a few more of them. I feel like by the time my run started getting far, I had already seen pretty much all of them, which was kind of disappointing. Ultimately, I feel like I could have experimented a bit more with them, but once I found what worked, I didn't want to change it up for fear that I would lose a run because of it. That's kind of the give and take with a roguelike system. Your progress is on the line every time, so you're incentivized to play it safe. I pretty much never used the perks that came with some sort of detriment because of that. But all in all, it's a fine system that adds a bit of strategy to the game. Those permanent perks are going to be the main thing you spend resources on in the hub, but if you're like me, you also did your best to deck the place out in all the purchasable decorations. Here, again, I do wish there were a few more decorations to mix and match with, but for what it is, it's a charming addition. So, I guess that's it, huh? That's pretty much every aspect of the campaign mode that I could think of. But I do have one final thought before we hit the ultimate conclusion. For as much as all this stuff serves to flesh out the shows that are already in the game, I do think it's a bit of a missed opportunity that they didn't use these systems to represent some other shows. Despite having fighters in the first game, Ariel Monsters and CatDog go completely unrepresented here. Why not give them a perk? Or an NPC appearance? Or anything, really? Same goes for all the shows I've ranted about in the past. Chalk Zone, Cat Scratch, Back at the Barnyard, Tough Puppy, and of course, my one and only, The Fairly Odd Parents. By far still the most glaring omission of this whole thing. It's unfortunate that any new shows will have to come through DLC because they won't be implemented into the campaign the way all the base game shows are. What a shame. This mode is where the crossover feels more real than ever before, where all these worlds really feel like they come to life, but I doubt they're gonna add story perks or NPCs or bosses as DLC. But as I said last time, I am somewhat reductively focusing on what the game isn't rather than what it is. And what it is a ton of fun. My final review would be that, looking at the big picture, the campaign is pretty whatever, a fun enough distraction when you're not playing online that can feel repetitive and aggravating. But it's when you zoom in on the little things where the love and care for these cartoons really shines through. I have my qualms with it, but at the end of the day, this campaign did honestly turn the game around for me pretty substantially. It reminded me that, oh yeah, these devs do like these shows. There's no way this dialogue and these references would be so spot on if they didn't. I don't take back a single thing I said in my previous videos. I am still deeply confused by some of these roster decisions, and this first wave of DLC makes me want to puke. But I found my little pocket of joy in this game, as Zim screams to the heavens, Jenny gets herself some upgrades, Vlad and Danny square off, Aang hangs out at the koi pond from the Northern Water Tribe, and I get to fight a Sartana of the Dead boss fight. Never thought that would happen in a million years. So, thanks Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2. You got me smiling and reliving childhood despite everything. Good on ya. So, I guess the question becomes, am I going to be making any more content about this game in the future? Probably not. I have no real interest in covering the DLC right now. Maybe future waves will change that. I don't have any ideas for covering the game as it currently stands, so I guess until further notice, we're done here. Who knows though, if I could figure out how to stream from my Switch, maybe we have some fun exploring the game live or something. Don't get your hopes up though, I am very bad with the whole streaming thing. Thanks all of you for watching, especially those of you who subscribed in the wake of my previous Nick All-Star Brawl coverage. I really do appreciate it. The channel's at a pretty ridiculous place now, and I consider that first NASB2 vid one of the major stepping stones to where we are now. So, again, thank you so much. If you feel so inclined, please like, comment, and subscribe. See y'all next time.